This is We the Sales Engineers Podcast, show 147.
Welcome to We the SEs Podcast, the show for sales engineers by sales engineers with your host, Ramsey Majaba.
What's up, SE Nation? Welcome back to another video. How you guys doing? Well, I guess I have an announcement to make. My wife gave birth to my third child and I haven't slept in a few days, so if I sound delirious, it probably is because I am, but this has to go out on Monday and it's Thursday. So here I am. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Note that we recorded the episode last week, so I wasn't delirious while asking the questions, but for the intro and outro, here we are. Some housekeeping items. So we talked about how I'm offering kind of a reward or a free giveaway for people who post a review on Google Play, LinkedIn, wherever. And I got a few. However, no one reached out to me to tell me that they just did that. And a lot of reviews don't have actual names. So I don't know who actually reviewed it or not, and I'm not sure how to actually provide that reward. So if you have reviewed the show, please reach out to me with a snapshot of the review you've already done and let me know that it's you or it's not you. I don't know why you'd email me to tell me it's not you. So don't do that. But reach out, let me know so I can actually work with you and send you whatever you've earned. All right. Today's guest, or last week's guest to be exact, is Matt Elsom. He is the Chief Commercial Officer of Emma3D. And Emma3D is software for sales engineers to kind of create stories, but we didn't really get into Emma3D. The whole point of me talking to Matt was because he's not a sales engineer. He had some sales experience, but not in the high-tech industry where you'd require a sales engineer, or he would end up using an actual engineer. But he's doing a lot of that work right now. And he's not selling his product right now because it's not available, but at least that's my understanding. Might have changed since we last talked. Check it out, emma3d.com. But anyways, he's from the outside looking in. He's not a sales engineer, and he's been talking to hundreds, or I don't know if hundreds, but a lot of sales engineers since they started coming out with Emma3D as a software. And he's been doing demos to sales engineers. He's basically been working with sales engineers, trying to perfect the story and all that. And he learned a lot from talking to us, from sales engineers and from about the sales engineering community. So I just wanted to talk to him about it, see from an outsider's perspective what he learned and what value he could provide us, because he also was a customer at one point in his career. That's a fairly long-winded intro. I hope you guys enjoy the show. Good afternoon, Matt. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. Good afternoon.
So, welcome to the show. We've been talking a little bit off record, you and I, but I'd like the people listening to actually understand a little bit more about you, who you are, what you do.
Yeah, so I'm Matt Elsom, as you said, and I work with Emma3D. I'm responsible for in theory, I'm the chief commercial officer, but actually that means I'm head of sales, head of pre-sales, I'm junior pre-sales analyst, I'm kind of sales assistant, sales operations. I'm just everything to do with commercial things at Emma3D. We're a startup, so we don't have a lot of people to fulfill those roles.
So basically your job is to make sales, whatever it takes. Like you're doing sales operations as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't say whatever it takes, Ramsey. I draw a line on a couple of things, not many,
okay.
but most, my job is to make sales. That's right.
All right. I guess I'm gonna have to be
really
specific.
At this stage, yeah, you don't throw out whatever it takes, because that's a broad church.
That's a broad. Okay.
But I do. Yeah, I think maybe before I have to do whatever I can to make sales, I'm really focused on working out how we should do our selling. Yeah.
Okay.
So we've not really gone to market yet. We're still planning out what we need to be doing.
Okay. So you're planning out what you need to be doing.
Yeah.
How okay, that's what's your history before you got here, actually?
Yeah, so my background is primarily in kind of technology, data analytics sales, in the banking, credit risk, fraud, AML, those sorts of things. And I started off as a salesman a long time ago as a graduate sales trainee with ADP, and back in the 90s. And then I sort of did kind of a bit of a sales career and ended up being a sales director of an organization which is now part of TransUnion. And then I went and did I did a stint being the CEO of a small data company. So that was kind of the trajectory of where my career took me, to being a CEO of a small data company. It was incredibly difficult. We were really small. I was an investor. It was a hard journey, and we did fine. We ended up doing okay, and we didn't lose all our money, and we didn't lose all our shareholders' money, and we made a little bit, but it was a hard journey. And I've just been sort of trying to work out other ways of being involved as an entrepreneur since then. So I've done entrepreneurial jobs in big companies since then, but also or bigger companies where they had guaranteed revenue on one set of products, but they wanted to branch out in something new. So I headed up that. And then Emma is me jumping right back into full entrepreneurship. Basically, you make it work or it doesn't work kind of scenario.
Wow. Okay. I think we have a bunch of questions. Benny, I'll let you start because you wrote it first.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I'm gonna say, like Ren says, a bunch to pick from here. But just because you mentioned your sales experience in the 90s, kind of as a new grad, you started over at ADP. Looking back, the 90s always seems like it's 10, 15 years ago, but now it's even more than 20 years ago at this point.
Yeah.
As how has been changed, I guess, in the world of sales between how things were approached back then versus how things are done now? Is it just technology that's used, or are methodologies different? Are people's mindsets different between now and then?
I think mindsets are really different, and it's difficult. I mean, I couldn't say this is how it was in the 90s. I could tell you about my experience in it's relatively narrow, but my experience in the 90s. And so ADP was an American company, and things were a little different than they might have been in British companies. It was a bit more, they've got, basically, when you're an American company, not a British company, you do more stuff for more people. So you have more data points. So then you can be more rigorous with your processes because you understand more, because you've got more data points. So it was an incredibly prescriptive sales process, incredibly prescriptive. Like cold calling is Tuesday afternoons, Thursday mornings, the whole afternoon, Tuesday afternoon, the whole morning, Thursday morning. You have to do it. No meetings, nothing. If you get an important client meeting, tell them you can't make it. You've got to be in the office, you've got to be cold calling. And then we'd have a piece of paper. We didn't have a spreadsheet. We'd have literally a piece of paper photocopied with 100 numbers on it. And then you tick one off. Each cold call you made, you tick one off. And then if you made a contact, you had another load of numbers, you tick one off. And then when you made a contact, if you got a first meeting, you tick another one off. And there was this idea, you had to aim for these metrics of 10-3-1, 10-3-1. Every 10 calls you make, you're going to get a contact with 3 people, and you're going to get a meeting with one of those. And those sorts of really prescriptive things. And the way that we got leads was unbelievable. We would literally drive in our car and look, because we were selling outsourced payroll and HR services, right? ADP pretty much did then what it does now, but just a more narrow version. And we'd drive and look for companies, look buildings. And then you get out and you go into reception and you'd say, hi, it was finance director who we're selling to. It's like, never talk to HR directors, talk to finance directors. So we were there, we're finding it, and we'd say to the receptionist, who's your finance director? And they tell us, or maybe they wouldn't, right? And then you'd say, can I have a compliment slip? And you write their name on, and you'd write their phone number on. No, you didn't bother taking an email address. You get a phone number. And that was a compliment slip, and that was called comp slipping. And we just you spent hours comp slipping, like driving around industrial estates, getting out your car, getting these things. And then you'd do that, and you would, and then those would be the numbers that you'd be calling, right? That's what you would go and call on a Tuesday and a Thursday. So that was all pretty prescriptive. The other thing was, so the work, that sounds really basic compared to how it is now. But the other thing is the work environment was really different. And so people shouted at us. We were the first grads they'd ever taken, like a graduate intake, and they took us from this kind of recruitment scheme called Pareto Law that some of your UK listeners will know about. A couple of really great guys set up a business called Pareto Law, which would help you find students to be trained into sales, and then they do the training, and it was a whole process. And they got us. We were their first batch of graduates, and they treated us really badly. Looking back on it, it seemed okay. But, at the time it seemed okay. Looking at it now, I mean, just shouting at us, swearing at us. It wasn't entirely unlike Glengarry Glen Ross. It literally was a bit like that. Dropping F-bombs, C-bombs when they were talking to you, shouting at you. It was kind of brutal and abrasive. But
Just to clarify,
I want to clarify. That wasn't an ADP thing. That was the culture of people who worked in sales at that time.
Okay, that's
and
what I
it
wanted
might have
to
only
clarify.
been our group, could have been only our office, but I'm not sure. I just think that was kind of the 90s. You had to get on and do stuff, and if someone wasn't doing it, you screamed in their face, and it was kind of like that. It was pretty hard. So yeah, you can see from that to now, lots has changed. The way you speak to people, but even just believe it. I mean, my manager said to me early on, I won't name him. He said, I know how to motivate you. And I said, how's that? He said, I'm just going to always be on your case, come down on you like a ton of bricks. And I thought, oh, great, this is going to be nice. But no one would say that now. No one would even think it. We all know that how you motivate people, invest in them is more complex, and like fear-driven management is not seen as such a good thing these days. So so much has moved. But then the use of tools, to access people and contact people, and we'd literally, when you cold called someone, you knew nothing of what their company did. You did no research because there wasn't really anywhere to do it. Like, what would you do? So you literally would cold call someone knowing nothing of what they do. You had no kind of warm, I understand you've been doing this, but you've stated in your last report you were trying to do more of that, and I think we could help you do that, or whatever. There was none of that.
Right.
You're just in there. The guy picks up the phone and you go like, sell, get a meeting. It was like that. It was hard, but it was, I don't know, it was fun in a way. And if I was quite a competitive individual, and if you're a competitive person, it was kind of fun to be part of, I suppose.
For sure.
It's like everything. If you ever played basketball and you watched Michael Jordan back in the day, they used to get beat up, and now it's just soft. Soccer or football is the same way. Everything's just, people are putting people first now versus the business, or at least to some extent. So it's interesting because I don't think people would last long today if people are yelling at them, mainly because they have way too many options.
Yeah, no, it's true. But also I think there's a concept of long-term greedy. I think we've understood the concept of long-term greedy, not short. Like, we were very short-term greedy.
Yep.
Like, I want that, I'm going to scream at you until you give it to me. Whereas actually I might realize that I let you have that even though I want it, because there's a bigger thing that could be achieved in the long run. So building relationships and all those things are seen as valuable, and it wasn't quite the same always then. But it was pretty hard. But then, and you just moved on. Like, after not too long, I didn't like that guy much anymore, coming down on me like a ton of bricks. I got pretty fed up with that, so I moved on.
Nice. So another question that's unrelated to what we wanted to talk about, but you did mention you were in sales and then you became a CEO of a company.
Yeah.
How does one go from no CEO experience to being a CEO of a company? Did you start that company?
No, I didn't. And it was there was a private equity company investing in it, and they wanted to replace the current CEO, and they were looking for who might be good. And it was a small company, right? It was 12 people. So
Okay.
it's not like I went from being a sales director to suddenly being CEO of some huge company. It was like, you get a bigger job, but in a smaller company. There are kind of pros and cons of it. And that's where you learn your trade of being a CEO. But it was difficult, and I didn't necessarily make a particularly great job of it. But that's that's how I guess that's how you learn to be a CEO, right? You just do it. You've got to have your first chance of doing that. But and of course, people come from different backgrounds to being a CEO. You get people from the finance route and so on. And I think it would be an easier jump now, because I think in sales now you tend to be more P&L focused as a sales guy. You understand, I think, more often the metrics of the business than I might have done like 20, 25 years ago. So once you understand the metric, you've got a bit of a financial insight, even though you don't understand like necessarily accounting regulations and all those things, which you get help for anyway. But just to understand the metrics of how a business works is really clearly important if you're a CEO. But I learned some of that stuff pretty quickly.
So you do have a vast experience in sales and being a leader. How is it now that you've transitioned more into like a sales engineering ecosystem?
Yeah, well, it's really interesting. So the last time I was a sales director would have been in like 2010, 2011. And we were part of a company. I was in a company that was bought by Pitney Bowes. And we were a soft part. We got bought by what was Pitney Bowes software at that time. And we didn't really have sales engineers. It just wasn't really a role. You kind of, what you did was you got the people who did PS, services, post-sales, delivery, and the ones who seemed most friendly. Or you got someone from the product team, like, or even sometimes development, but mostly product or that. The ones who could make eye contact. If they could physically make eye contact with another human, you're like, right, you got to help us. And you just get them to, and you'd say like, I need you to do a demo. And they'd say, well, what do you want me to demo? So like, just show the software, right? You just got to show the software. Do it. Just show it to them. And they go, what's the background? Well, I don't background schmack around. Just show the software. So that and we weren't a very evolved company at that point. And so then coming to Emma and just looking at how the world of technical and software sales has evolved, and seeing that sales engineering it's a real profession, right? And I don't want to patronize all your listeners, you will know that, and you've had a bunch of people who've had careers in it, but it wasn't broadly seen in the companies I was in up to say 10 years ago. And then I've had this sort of time out of the whole big technical selling. So coming back to this area and to see how it's moved on, and it's not, and it's absolute, like everything, it's become broken down into its, are you a good storyteller? Your demonstrations? How do you craft your POCs? How do you, all of that stuff? It's all broken down, and there are experts who can train you on it. And it's just moved on massively. It's the idea that it isn't someone who does something else as their full-time job, who sometimes is made to do some stuff to support the sales team, but it's a proper genuine career. And I think some of it's come with the additional complexity of software. You couldn't, if you were like a ServiceNow, you couldn't just get some random person. You've got to have someone who understands architecture and how to explain architecture and so on. So it's, it's by necessity, it's gone like that. But it to me, it's an absolutely excellent move. The way we've gone is a brilliant way. And as companies develop and evolve, I don't think they always do evolve in a brilliant way. But in this instance, I think it is to recognize that the communication of complexity and technicality that, after all, can't be touched or seen physically in most cases, it's a combination of an art and a science. And it takes training and practice and skill and learning and certifications and all of those things. I think the recognition of that is a really good move.
So there's a gentleman by the name of Rob Falcone who wrote a book called Just Effing Demo. And the genesis of it was people telling him, just effing demo, just demo the product. Don't ask me questions, just demo the product. So it's kind of interesting coming from you. You're coming from the other side. You're the person telling someone to just demo. And, someone wrote a book about it. It's always fun.
Yeah, that's right. And it's amazing to see the difference of what I thought I wanted someone to do for me when they were demoing off for someone on my team or whatever, versus what people now knows. But so, tell, show, tell, talk about 3 things, whatever. We were like, just tell them how the software works.
Yeah.
Like give them a tour of all of the software. Yeah. Like show them all the features. Show it all. Just be showing all the stuff. And there was
Basically the
no
opposite.
sense of like, where are they now? What's the story? Show them something, tell them why you did it, tell them about something else, show it to them. So none of that, just show them all the stuff. And the goal was, if I can show them enough stuff, they'll be amazed and they might buy. That's
funny.
kind of how it was.
When I first joined sales engineering, I was working with a salesperson who did that still. Like that was in 2014. And just like click every button. And then I end up clicking every button and getting in trouble because there's one button I didn't have the chance to figure out what it does. And now they're asking me about that specific button. So you've talked to a lot of sales engineers since you've started with Emma. First off, when did Emma start? Emma 3D.
Tons. Well, so Emma 3D started as a company. It would have been 22 months ago. Okay. But at that point, you know, when you're a software company starting, there's nothing. Yep. And then you're building product and all that stuff. So we started to think more commercially about things a bit less than a year ago. And then we actually did something about that when I joined in September. So we're less than 5 months or 4.5 months into trying to work out how you sell what we've built in Emma. And that's why I've drawn so heavily on sales engineers. And I think I've been drawn to them for 3 reasons, right? Number one, we've realized pretty quickly that what we've made with Emma is really good for sales engineers. It can really help them do their job. Number two, if I'm trying to work out how to sell software, it turns out sales engineers know an awful lot about that. And there are bits, you know, the whole maybe negotiation, creating cold leads, that's what sales reps do, and that's fine. But sales engineers are really strong on all these bits that I need to understand. How do we message? What kind of stories should we tell? How should I demo? And all those sorts of things. Sales engineers, so they're really knowledgeable on the things that I need to know. And then the third reason is they're really available. And I don't mean they're available because they've got nothing to do, but I mean they're willing to share time. And I found that sales engineering as a profession has drawn this fairly unique group of people who, and there are a lot of them, right? You know that there are thousands and thousands, but so many of them are willing to give me half an hour. When I say, could you give me 20 minutes, half an hour, just to share, I want to show you something. I want your opinion on the way I show it. I want to talk to you about the problem we're trying to solve. Is it really a problem, or have we just made that up? And so on. So many have just said, yeah, sure, I'll find half an hour. And what in one instance, there was someone, I don't know if I should name her or not. It was just amazing. She said, look, I want to make sure that it's out of my work time so I can really give you full attention. So she arranged a call with me. So it was at 10:30 her time in the evening, just because she really wanted to make sure she gave me good time to think about this. And those sorts of things, that's fairly unusual. But it isn't unusual, it turns out, in the sales engineering world. People in pre-sales, I characterize them as open, supportive, and collaborative. And now there are other things like inquisitive and questioning, all those things. But those things, open, supportive, collaborative, they're ideal when you're trying to find out stuff, right? Yep. If you can find a group of people that are open, supportive, collaborative, you've got a chance to find out a lot. So that's yep. Why that's been my transition to talking to sales engineers.
That's all so good. There's a bunch of things actually that come out of that. Maybe a couple of questions. One, I guess the one that has to do with sales engineering, I'll ask in just a second. But just with respect to Emma 3D, really quickly, you mentioned you're kind of building out, I guess, it's sales strategy, unless I misheard, more or less, over the last 4 months, give or take, and kind of how to position the sales team and everything. How has that been being a remote process, I suppose? Like I'm sure the company started and everything, but in pre-COVID times, but now to have to do all these relatively collaborative activities as a new company remotely, how's that been for y'all?
Well, I think it's been really good. I mean, I take like COVID lockdown's been bad for loads and loads of reasons for loads of people, but just in this particular aspect, it's been good for us. So I think of us as lockdown native as a company, because although we did exist, it was the founder and a few software game designers. That's how we developed our platform, and they were all working remotely anyway, and that was fine for them. And then as we've taken on 2-3 more people, me included, it has been during the time of lockdown or COVID. So that's how we run as a company, right? We know no other thing as a business. We're COVID natives. And so what that means is I've got incredible access to people, because like you said, you guys live 20 minutes away from each other, but you can't communicate with each other any more immediately than I can communicate with you, and I'm over here in the UK. So I would say that the majority of the people I've spoken to were not based in the UK. You know, some, I don't know, maybe a third of them have been. I think most of the people I've spoken to have been in the US. I've spoken to quite a few people in Latin America and Canada and Brazil, and last week a few in South Africa. I go like this, Brazil, I meant Australia when I did that with my hand, because that looks to me where Australia is. Probably Brazil was covered by Latin America, I think. So Australia too. But I've, you know, that reach that you get by the idea that no one knows whether you're local or not. Everyone's local on Zoom. It's been really handy, really handy. I can imagine in normal circumstances, it would feel like I should speak to people in the UK and maybe the odd chat to someone in the US. But at some point they're going to say, have you not got someone in the US who we could talk to or meet face to face? Because that's not possible. Whereas we've got incredible international reach with this. I've got slight concerns. I mean, obviously we're making plans, but I've got slight concerns about what we do when lockdown ends. And all these people are like, what, you're 6 hours away? It turns out the only thing that distinguishes us internationally on this now is time zone and language. And we can deal with time zone, like startups, you just work whenever you need to. So that's not an issue. For me anyway, and it's not an issue. So then there's just kind of language. Can I either speak the language of the people or not? But whether I live in the same town or them, or country or continent, has become fairly immaterial.
I love that. I love the whole idea about nobody's immediately available for anybody more for anybody else any more than anybody else. That's a really good insight, and that's so true. All right, and then something else that you mentioned a little bit earlier, I guess, just with respect to, well, I guess you mentioned it a few times, with respect to your relationship with sales engineers. So you mentioned how back in the day, sales cycles and maybe the sales relationship and sales process, I suppose, wasn't as complex as it is now, which then in part necessitated the SCing role. You also kind of described your experiences as well with SCs and kind of the characteristics that they have in order to fulfill the role that they fill. So from your perspective, I guess, what is the role of the sales engineer or the purpose of pre-sales in the sales cycle?
Oh, that's such a hard question to answer. Not because I haven't got an idea, but I know there are tons of people out there who absolutely know the answer to this, who know it better than me. Anyway, so I think that first and foremost, I feel, I'm so scared saying these words now.
Honestly, I think that's the best part, because you've lived the life.
You're someone from the outside looking in, so it's interesting to see what other people think about us, because we are in our own little bubble. And your opinion matters because you might be kind of the people we're trying to sell to as well. So knowing what you think about us is fairly important for at least me. I don't know.
So I think number one, you've got your job is to understand, right? So I think your job is to understand your own offering in a way that not many people in the organization do. Understand it in a different way than the dev team do or the product team. You've got to understand it much more from a client point of view and what kinds of problems people might be solving with it. But you've got to understand it from a product and technical point of view in a totally different way than salespeople do as well. So understanding of what you have, and then understanding what the client situation is. So if I kind of said, number one thing, get understanding. So understand your own stuff and understand a client situation, because then like the scene is set for you to make some money, right? For your company to be able to make a difference in that situation and for them to be able to meet their financial requirements and so on. So I think understanding is really core. That's what I'm looking for an SE to be able to do. And then you could break that down then. So how do you get understanding of another company? So then you've got, what are your questioning techniques in discovery and whiteboarding and all those things that enable you to be able to say, I get your problems. I understand what they are. I understand your difficulties. I understand why achieving whatever your goals are is difficult. because of this, and it may be technically, it may not only be technically, it could be because of regulatory things or other circumstantial things, but I understand it. Because I think as soon as a prospective client sees that you understand and care about their situation, you've just got this immediate building of trust. And trust is what we're trying to build, right? We want them to trust in our intentions and our competence. And so as soon as I can say, I can say to someone, I really understand your situation in a way that they can really believe, then trust is built. So then when I now, knowing my product the way I do and my solution, I'm able to say, there are things we could solve here. There are ways we could help you. And we could actually, and start to paint a picture. It doesn't have to be like this. There are ways to do things differently. So I could give that, you could have an existence that looks a bit more like this. And I can get you there. I can show you the path. I can show you the ways to get you there. So I think all of that has to come up based on this understanding. So then, to do all of that, then you've got these next tier of skills. So you've got those questioning, discovery skills. You've got storytelling skills. You've got even like kind of design skills, depending on your role, obviously, and whether you're a solution architect or whatever. But you've got design skills, and then you've got demonstration skills. And you've got persuasion skills, and I don't mean that in the worst sense, trying to manipulate someone to do what you want, but to try and make them really see that what you have will do a job for them that they need to have done. And I kind of think, finally, you want them to understand that you get their position, you understand a future and how to get them there, and that you give them clarity on this in a way that they'll remember, so that they care about your solution. Because ultimately, I'm really cognizant of the fact that you're not in the room when they're doing their decision making. You know, competition, whatever, you've all done your best stuff, you've put in all your techniques that you've learned in your training, and then you're all gone. And then they're going, I really liked the one that did this. Which one was that one? You know, that observability, was that New Relic? And someone's going, no, that was Splunk. No, it wasn't. It was the guy from Dynatrace. It's him who said it. You know, all of those things, you know, realistically, those kind of conversations go on. They can't even remember necessarily who had which particular thing. So if we're there to not be powerless in that situation, we want what we explain to be clear, memorable, so they care. And then you've got your chance that your champion that you've been nurturing carefully really is going to go into bat. You're no longer there, and they're going to be there, knowing what you'll offer, believing in the picture that you've painted to them, remembering what was you, and then working hard to try and deliver that for you when you're not there. So I think it is those layers of skills come into kind of, you know, like we said, discovery, storytelling, persuasion, and so on. And then you could probably break all those down to another layer. But to me, it's got to start with understanding beyond anything else.
That's an amazing answer.
It's so interesting because
I just made that up as I went along, right? So I'm freestyling jazz here, and you hit some wrong notes when you do that, right?
But here's the thing: like, it looks, when you say it, after you say it, you're like, yeah, that's obvious. But no one's ever said that on the show. No one's ever said that they're gonna forget who said what after you're done your demos. Like, you always think, oh, they're gonna remember me. I'm memorable. Right, I'm 6'2", you know, I crack jokes, they're gonna remember me. But so many times they come back and ask me, like, hey, you showed us this thing. It's like, no, I didn't. Wait, who showed you this thing? So it's nice.
And maybe that's kind of the help, because I had done that role as CEO and so on. So I've done some buying as well. And I've seen some of that, and I just know how it was. We were like, was it the one with that tall guy? Like, you know, there was a guy with a buzz cut who was pretty big. Was it him, or was it the guy with the massive beard? I can't remember. One of these guys said something good. Should we, you know, let's ask for another meeting? And I think that's what SEs have to try and stop. You just, I can't, it was either the bearded guy or the guy with the buzz cut. I can't remember. Let's get another meeting with them both and find out. And like, I am always one meeting away from a decision. And, you know, as SEs, I think that's a real power. We kind of think that it's the sales guys who are hustling on and getting the sales process done. But I think by SEs bringing clarity quickly, or not foolishly quickly, but as quickly as reasonably can come, actually SEs are the guys that can shorten the sales cycle. Because time to clarity is a really important concept, I think. I've just made it up that it is, just from listening to about 100 people in the last 4 months. I think time to clarity is really important. And SEs are all over that. That's what they need to be good at.
Yeah. I didn't I learned that late in my career as a sales engineer, where I used to tell them, well, you have this option and this option and this option and this option, and bam, that's like 5 months of sales cycle added
Oh, man.
to my sales.
Yeah.
Versus this is the best option. We can do this option, but I would recommend that option. But yeah, no.
In the early 2000s, I think 2004, I worked for a company that sold like a decisioning platform, and it was a platform, and we could do anything. And it was the era of it was when the platform just came in. You know, everyone was fed up with this one that said, "How do you do this?" Well, you press that button, you press that button. You go, well, what if you need to do it a different way? You can't do it another way. You got to press that button and that button. And you know, that time had gone, and it was now platform. But we suffered because someone said, well, how do you whatever? How do you create a random sample group so that the most of your strategy is going through, you know, 90% is going through the champion strategy, and then you've got a challenger strategy. How do you do that? And we go, any way you want.
Yeah.
We left. They were like, what? What do you mean any way we want? We go, it's, you know, you just configure it. Like, you're just configuring. Here's a blank sheet. How do you want to do it? And they were like, I don't want a blank sheet. I'm not some kind of software designer. Give you know, show me some stuff. And then we got to this phrase where we'd said, well, the way you do that is you do it like this. And we'd look at their face, and if they didn't look at us, we go, oh, you can do it any way you want. that was kind of, we thought we got the genius. Like, got to do it this way or any other way at all you can think of.
Yeah, no, nice. And so I am curious, you're kind of breaking into the SE role. Like you're the chief commercial officer, CCO, I guess, but you're doing all sorts of different jobs. You're kind of focusing a little bit right now on sales engineering and that role. You haven't done demos in the past. You've asked people to do demos. How has that been? What struggles have you gone through to actually make your demos better as you're talking to more people?
Oh man. So, well, the thing is, I've gone into this knowing I'm bad, and that's really good. It's way better to know you're bad than to not know you're bad. And I knew that I knew nothing, right? So I didn't go in demoing with confidence. I went in and I because I haven't actually gone in demoing trying to sell. I've spent all this time talking to tens, hundreds of sales engineers, just saying, look, can you help me demo better? This is how I'm doing it at the moment, but like, feel free to tell me I've got it all wrong. So I've asked people these three questions always. Is the problem we think we're solving real? Does the way I demo my software make you think that we actually do anything to move the needle on that problem? And then how was I demoing? Like, did the flow work? Am I clicking on the right number of things? And I've had some brilliant feedback, and I've had some people. So I think the goal is to be teachable, right? I think that's pretty much the goal of life. And if anyone said, what one thing would you take away? Just be teachable. Whatever your role is, whether you're the CEO of some massive company or something else, just be teachable. And so I've come into this saying to people, can you show me? Can you tell me? And people have said some cool things, and I've been really lucky, and I've spoken to, you know, some of people in the industry who know all about this, like John Kerr and Don Carmichael and Patrick Pissang, and I've read stuff that Stefan Muller's written, and I've listened to your podcasts and stuff by Chris White and all these guys, right? And so they've given me lots of feedback. And I think one of the best bits of feedback on demoing that I got was like, there's a cool bit in our software, and I'm saving it to the end, and it's like the big finish. I show this thing at the end, and the guy said, "Why? That was a brilliant bit. It was John Kerr." He said that bit at the end, the whole time lapse thing, how you show change over time. That's really good. Why didn't you show it at the start? Like, why didn't you just show us to get us understanding it? And I said, well, I wanted to say it, like, to save the bit at the end, like bring a bit of drama to the demo. Show it at the end. You know, look, it's a software demonstration, not a murder mystery. You don't have to save the big reveal to the end. You can show it near the beginning. And that's really stuck with me. And this idea of, and so now I've been really battling and asking people, I know that you want to show the whole at the beginning and then take them through it. But what does showing the whole thing at the beginning mean? Does it actually mean showing them your very best stuff? Or does it just mean giving them a bit of a context, or what is it? And I've been working through that with lots of people helping me. But other people have said other things like, just why did you click on so many things? And there were a couple of things, right? I've done that. You asked a question the other day on LinkedIn, Ramsey, where you said it was like the 10 commandments of sales engineering, and someone, I can't remember who it was, had written, "Thou shalt not click on something you've never clicked on before." And I've fallen foul of that. I put that wins. Whatever anyone else wrote, that was the clearest comment. And I've clicked on a couple of things. And someone said to me at the end, when you did that thing and then you started going, and then and your brain's desperately moving, but you're trying to look cool and calm while you do it and back your way out of whatever situation you now find yourself in. And it was obviously entirely transparent to the person I was talking to. Yeah. And he said, "Why did you, have you clicked on that before?" I went, "No." He said, "Why did you try to click on it then?" I said, "I don't know. I just kind of felt that I wanted to show you another cool thing, and I thought it might be good." And he was like, "Don't do that in a demo."
Yeah, it's very interesting. I've done demos where I start with the best thing, and I'm supposed to go back and show them how to get to where, like, how they got to that, like, aha moment. And as soon as I show, it's like, yeah, that's all we wanted to know. No, that's amazing. We're good. It's like, all right, I just saved myself 3 hours of demos with possible clicks on the wrong things. And the possibility of my sales guys, like, just show them that bit that you haven't prepared for yet.
Yeah. Well, and I'm lucky, right? Because I'm doing this on my own at the moment. Yeah. And it's and that may not always be the case, but at the moment I'm doing this on my own. So I've not got someone like kicking me under the table then showing them the metrics change when I just don't think it's necessary or whatever, because I'm trying to hone this thing. But what Emma's kind of new stuff, it's a 3D digital model of complex things, and we can filter to make it easy or show the big ugly glory or whatever of the model. And so I've had lots of feedback from people saying, "Why have you shown something so complicated on the first screen?" It's like, because I'm not used to this metaphor, this 3D model. My eye is like looking all over. I don't know what I'm meant to be looking at. And so I pared it down, and then I still had the same comments, and I pared it down yet further, and I still had the comments. So I filtered. When I say pared, I mean I filtered and more, and I've got down to, I start with something very, very basic. So then I thought, well, how do I combine showing them something very basic at the beginning with this point, which is show them the good stuff at the start, and then so I've done it in terms of it. I tell them what the big picture is, but I don't show it to them. And then when we start on something very basic, and then we remove layers of filter. So we reveal layers of the model bit by bit, function by function. And at the moment, that seems to be how it's working. But, I'm just looking at my diary on this other screen. I've got more meetings this week where they all say Emma opinion. And someone's going to give me an opinion on my demoing. And I've got about 6 of them this week that I'm going to do. And people will continue to hone it. So my demo now is very different than it was 4 months ago. It's a totally different thing. And I've started to realize, you do different demos for different situations and different scenarios rather than having a demo. Yeah. So I've got versions and flavors for different, if someone is a technical architect or a solution architect, it's a bit different maybe what I'll show them. So on, depending what their software does in their industry. If they're in infrastructure, it's different than if they've got a user tool or something like that. So yeah.
Nice. Right. Well, I can talk to you for days, but it's time to move on to the not so fire round. These are the same 4 questions we ask almost every guest, and I am curious to hear what you have to say about them. Benny, you want to start?
Do you think should I have prepped for this? When you say
no. It does 2 things. It shows us who's listened to the podcast before. Yeah. It also gives us an honest opinion about what you think.
Well, it shows you who's got time to spend more than 45 minutes listening to a podcast.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of people have listened to up to a certain amount, right?
Yeah. Let's put it that way. All right, go ahead, Benny.
Cool. And also, do want to say, like, given the answers that you've come up with today, just based upon I can't even say words, based upon the ones that you just came up with off the top of your head, I'm sure your answers are going to be quality. So,
do my best.
So the first question is, what do you love about working with sales engineers, about pre-sales, about that whole world? Just what do you love about it?
What I really like is the people. I don't care about the subject matter. I mean, the subject matter is cool, but I've never worked in an environment with people that make you come away from a meeting feeling 10 times better than when you went in. it's such a non-competitive environment. And I'm used to meetings where you come out, I thought I knew about stuff, but this guy made it clear to me that I'm an absolute idiot. You sort of come out the meeting like that. I've been in lots and lots and lots of those meetings. Whereas with sales engineering world, people are like, I've given you some things to change and so on, but you can do this. This is great. You make those changes. You're going to fly. I love your software. I'm going to introduce you to some people. You're doing so well, Matt. You're doing so well. That's typically how my meetings end. And I just love spending time with this ecosystem of people. It's great.
I have to kind of disagree on one thing. We're a very helpful kind of bunch where we want to help people, but also when it comes to competitiveness, if we're competing over the same customer, I've seen some SEs who are kind of ruthless as well. And we know the feeling of being yelled at or not yelled at or being kind of told that we're stupid by customers. So when we talk to people who are trying to do something like what you're doing, we always try to provide constructive criticism. I can't even say that. Yeah, but okay. Yeah. So question number 2, what would you change about the role as you see it, like on the outside looking in?
That's a good question. I don't really know enough to say something really useful here, but I feel, right. So people keep talking about, AI will replace things and replace bits of roles. And there's some very cool automation software coming in right now to help with demos and so on. And I think it feels maybe like the sales engineer role might diminish a bit with automation, but actually in the bigger part of the sales process, I think there are more bits that could be from the sales rep role that could be eaten up. And I think some sales engineers could eat into that a bit. Now, I know there's real value in them not being too commercial. They win the trust of clients in a different way than sales reps do and so on. But my experience is that the people that do this well, and this is from 10 years ago when they weren't even really sales engineers, but they were just the conscience. They were the brains behind the selling operation, right? The sales guy, they're like, have you written that email that you told them you were going to write? And the sales guy's like, oh, no, I know, I've got to do that. And they're like, when you said we're going to solve this, we can't, don't you? You need to go to talk to products about this, don't you? Because you know that they're going to need to prioritize something there. Have you gone and done that? And the sales guy says, oh, no, I didn't have that conversation. And they're like, well, either you have it or I'm going to need to have it because someone's got to do that. So like the fact that they are the conscience and they're the brains and so on, I just think that there are many instances where I think when we look at a sale, we see these moments. It's like, quick, get the sales engineering for this bit, right? Get them away. Now get them in for this bit. We need them for that bit. But I think I'd like to see the sales engineers having, and maybe sales engineers would hate this, that might be, but I feel that they have the right characteristics to do more in the sales cycle. Because I think, well, we know this, they're believable and so on. I don't know. That's just my view from the outside.
I agree with you 100%. And also I feel it depends on the organizational structure. If it's one SE covering 1 to 3 salespeople, they're more involved in all the other aspects of sales. But if it's like 1 SE covering 10 or 10 SEs covering 50, they're just popping in for a specific thing. So I guess it depends on the way they structure it.
And put it this way, if I can afford to recruit one person next, is it going to be a salesperson or an SE? I'm recruiting an SE. No nice. No question. I'll find myself doing the stuff that salespeople should do that an SE doesn't want to do. I'll find a way to make myself do that. My number 1 will be an SE, and I reckon my number 2 will be an SE as well. The second one I'd hire a few SEs and not worry about the sales aspects of it. Not to diminish what salespeople do, but I'll just find a way to make myself do it. I think the value in our sales process that an SE brings is so much greater than what a sales rep brings for what we're trying to do.
You can always find a hybrid as well. Someone who would do both roles initially up until you're able to actually hire a salesperson or an SE.
Yeah.
Okay. Question number 3, Benny.
Yes, sir. So we've mentioned some really big heavy hitters of the SEing world during the conversation today. But what are some books or tools or other resources that you'd recommend for people that I guess that we either want to get better, I was going to say at sales engineering, but just in general, maybe books and tools, resources to read to work better with sales engineers or to better appreciate the role or things like that?
Yeah, well, to give you a good steer on that, I would need to have read some books.
Fair enough.
And given that I've just lost, I've given away my attention span to the demon of dopamine hits, and all I ever do is scroll on my phone. I'm now unable to read a book with more than like 1 page of writing. So what I would recommend this lot, I bought this lot from a shop. I got a meter. I said I want a meter of autobiographies and biographies, please. So I got those. So yeah, don't be fooled. I just think on LinkedIn, there are unbelievable resources, videos like these, ones with people who know more than I do, but there's so much. Darren Mason has been doing some awesome stuff recently that I've read and looked at on videos. I'm amazed at what a powerful body of useful work there is about how to be a better SE on LinkedIn. There just so much is being shared at the moment and created. Some of the stuff that Stefan Muller has written recently, I found really interesting. His superheroes thing that's been on LinkedIn a bit. I just think there is so much to be found there. I think if this, instead of going down the wormhole on YouTube of like people hurting themselves in the snow, which is a good 6 hours for anyone, but if instead of doing that you went down the wormhole of how to do a better demo on LinkedIn, it might be slightly less funny, but it would, there's so much to be found on LinkedIn. So I've seen people pushing books, but honestly, I don't have the attention span to read a 400-page book on anything to do with selling anymore. In my past, I've read Spin. I've read The Way of the Wolf. The Way of the Wolf is awesome. If you want to find out how to be quite aggressive, the guy who has The Wolf of Wall Street. And some of those books, I've read those in the past, but I haven't got brain space to read 400 anymore. I think there are a lot more immediate ways in videos and those sorts of things, podcasts.
I think it's wonderful. No, I think you and a lot of other people out there are probably the exact same way. Like, even thinking to myself, I don't even know the last time I read a full book, like some point in 2020, maybe like mid 2020, give or take.
I can read a novel, but I've really lost the ability to read a management book from start to finish, because they tend to write them like journalists write articles anyway. They tell you the stuff at the start, then they tell you it in a bit more detail, and then they really get into it. And by the third time, I'm like, okay, I got it with the first bit. That was cool, thanks. But I don't want to read tons and tons of pages of detailed evidence. So
that's funny, because that's how I read books. I kind of read the title. If it's interesting, I'll read the second paragraph. Like, I basically skip a lot of pages while I'm reading books these days, just because I've already read that somewhere else. It's the same example. It's the marshmallow example you used like in another book, so we'll skip over that. Yeah.
Well, and I think novels are different, right? Then the craft is in the language and how the story is told. And I think if you skim read those, you sell yourself short for really enjoying the story. But that's novels. But I think nonfiction. I love, there's a guy, I can't remember his name, but I follow him on LinkedIn who summarizes books. He's a genius. So he just says these, if you read from good to great, here you go, here's 2 pages. This is all you need to know about good to great. If you want to read like Freakonomics, just read this. If you want to read Spin Selling, 2 pages. That is a service. That's a service to a generation. That is summarizing good business books that people can then read.
The authors must hate him.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure, but they shouldn't be so verbose. That's their problem.
Well, who was it? Mark Twain? He said, "Sorry for writing such a long letter. I didn't have time to make it short." Something like that. I butchered it and paraphrased it.
I know. No, you're right. People say that, but I'm not sure. Yeah, I get it. Speech writers, it's really hard to say a lot of stuff in a short period of time. But yeah, so I get that. But some of these guys, I've researched this stuff. So I tell you, I'm going to write it all down. And you're going to learn it because you're going to know all the research I did. I think, oh, come on, give me a break.
So, I did the research. You're going to read it.
Yeah, that's it.
All right. So last question of the not so fire round. From the outside looking in, as a salesperson or as someone who's working with SEs right now, what have you seen that separates the great ones from the okay or not so good ones?
Oh, that's good. So I think it is being an inquisitive human being. I think you can't be really good at selling, and certainly not pre-sales, if you're not truly inquisitive. So again, I'm making this up on the spot, right? But we have an incredible radar for genuine versus non-genuine. And when I start to tell you about your company, because someone has taught me that, if you're going to speak to Binny, when you speak to anyone, you've got to have found out what their last year's results were and what their chairman said their goals for this year are and what their last 3 whatevers, the social selling stuff that we're taught to do. Research this stuff and then find a way to play it back in the conversation so that they think you're interested. I just think people pick up on it, and it's okay. It's like, yeah, here's another one who's faking they're interested in my business. They probably don't even say it because we've just gotten used to carrying it. That's like 90% of the people you speak to, right? We are interested in each other's businesses because we're long-term greedy, right? We want to sell to them, and there's kind of give and take. If I show you that I'm interested in you, Binny, over a period of time, at some point you'll be my key to some sales or a fortune or whatever. So I'm willing to put in the groundwork, but you can be sure I'll prove to you that I've done it because I need you to know. Versus, I'm actually just an inquisitive person. I just want to know, I'm interested. So your business, it's managed to thrive in this environment. How the heck did it do that? That genuine inquisitiveness, which is also, so what, you mean my product, it only works, we've only got it in AWS, we've not got it in Azure, or we can't multi-cloud. Why is that? Why did we make that decision? Like, I'm interested, I want to know. And I think all of that, just if you can be I suppose it's down to what I said earlier on about being teachable, but if you're a genuinely inquisitive person, so I had a chat with Ramsey before about how old his kids are, and I shed some light on what they're going to be like when they're older, which wasn't a totally positive discussion, was it? But I asked him, just because I wanted to know how old his kids are. I mean, I genuinely wanted to know. I wasn't trying to build a relationship so that later I could do something. Just wanted to know how old his kids are. And because I wanted to know, I've remembered the answers of how old his kids are. And I know that he had his kids, his wife had them 10 days late. And I know that his current one's due on the 29th, and it's not late yet, and who knows. But I only know that. I'm not showing off here. I was interested when I asked, so I remembered the information. And I'm not now trying to manipulate Ramsey so he thinks I was interested in him. I just was. And as we chat, when it comes to the 29th, I'm going to send him a quick thing saying, "Oi, did she drop it yet?"
No.
And
I'm already answering the question. No, she did not drop it.
No, she won't have done. I'll ask you on the 39th.
Yeah, 39th is good.
Of January. Has she dropped it yet? So I'll be asking that because I'll just know that's the time because I remembered. So I think I that's a really horrible technique to show that I'm the exemplar of the thing I'm talking about. Sorry, put that to one side. I think we should just be inquisitive people, and people who are inquisitive create those human connections that our radar, it doesn't necessarily notice them, but it notices the others. Yeah. And they just go into that, oh, this is just another business guy who says the things they're meant to say, and it's okay. I take it as a cost of doing business. I've got a bunch of fake relationships. It's just, that's how business is. But then those that aren't, where you have this genuine connection, they take you to a different dimension in trust. And remember what we said, it's for a sales engineer, everything is about trust. Does the client trust your intention and trust your competence? And if they do, then you're going to have flexibility to recommend the best solution for them. And it might cost a bit more, but it doesn't matter because they trust that you're the person who wants to deliver a cool thing for them and who knows how to deliver a cool thing for them. So yeah, be an inquisitive person. And my answer, I don't think you can be an inquisitive person if you're not. So actually, because you can't fake it, you can fake it for a little while, but we'll pick it up because we're just social animals. So my recommendation, if you're not an inquisitive person, is stop doing this job, leave this industry, leave your job now, hand in your notice. There are some good jobs for you, but this is not one of them. Okay.
All right. I feel like we're going to have a masterclass in relationship building at some point with you, Matt, because that was awesome.
I reckon I've burnt way more relationships than I've built. We could take it from a negative. Let's talk to Matt about how not to build a relationship.
We can do both, right?
And I'll tell you some of my war stories. This guy's not spoken to me for 15 years. Whereas this guy, he only didn't speak to me for 5 years. So, I think I did better on the first.
Yeah. You did better on the 15 years. Okay. All right. Now I got it. All right. I want to talk. Okay. We're just going to stop here because I can talk to you again all day. If people want to reach out and chat with you, or maybe they want to see Emma 3D, where can they do that?
So they could reach out to me on LinkedIn, or they could reach to me on matt@emma3d.com. You could look on www.emma3d.com. There are anything with Emma3D, you'll find us on LinkedIn, the web, and so on. LinkedIn's a good place to find us. A lot of our thinking about why 3D models work, how they impact the brain, the limbic system to help with understanding of memory, all of that stuff. We've written a lot about that on our page on LinkedIn. So feel free to take a look. Here's my big plug, my marketing moment. Look at Emma3D on LinkedIn.
Look at Emma3D. Nice. All right. So I'll link your LinkedIn profile on the show notes. This is show 147. And I'll link Emma3D as well on the show notes so people can know where to go. Thanks a lot, Matt. This was amazing. Hopefully we'll talk soon.
Yeah, we will do. Well, at least on the 39th of January, right?
39th of January, that's right. It's a leap year.
Cool. See you guys. Nice to meet you. Well, nice to meet you, Vinny. Anyway, bye.
Likewise.
All right. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the show. I want to resonate, or I want to emphasize one topic or one thing that Matt said, in the sense that sales engineering community is the best community in the world. I haven't seen a community try to help each other out as much as this community. And also Matt is proof that they help people outside that world. Someone who's trying to kind of do the sales engineering job, where he talked to a lot of experts. So I just want to say thanks for having me as part of your community. Like, it's been an honor, and I love working with you guys, and I want to continue working as a sales engineer, and like even the sales community in general. So it's a great community, and I'm happy to be a part of it. And I don't know why I'm being emotional. Could be because I haven't slept in a few nights, and it's currently late at night when I'm recording this. But sincerely, thank you for allowing me to be a part of you, and I will see you guys next week.